Hey all, welcome to Forest County, Pennsylvania, where we combine history with the outdoors. Now today, we're going to be digging in the dirt. Now, a quick reminder, you can follow us now on Facebook at the Forest County Outback page, and if you haven't joined, I invite you to do so. Just please read and follow the rules, and there's a couple membership questions. Please answer those. If you don't answer those, I will not approve your membership because we want to know you're not a bot. Today we're back at Clear Creek State Park and we're going to work on an archaeological dig. Now I filmed this a couple weeks ago at the same time I did the previous video 31, the Frazier sawmills. And this is kind of a continuation of that because what we're working on is the site of the blacksmith shop that was associated with the Frazier brothers logging and sawmill operations. Now I've been coming over and working on this. This is my 4th year working on this dig, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been very informative and educational, and it's real archaeology. Okay, if you are looking for reality TV type archaeology with manufacturer controversy and phony fights and all that, hey, History Channel is a couple clicks away. But if you want to see the real deal, keep watching. This is how it's done. So this is Forest County Outback 32, the dig at Clear Creek. Now, there are some folks in the video. Everyone who was in this video had prior knowledge that we would be filming and gave their consent to be in the video. So yeah, we don't film anybody without their knowledge or consent. So here we go. The main reason I'm here at Clear Creek today is to work on an archaeological dig. And I'm here with Brian Fritz. He's the archaeologist on this site. And it's the blacksmith shop that went with the Frazier sawmills. And I'm going to let him explain what's going on here and talk about archaeology. And so, yes, go ahead, Brian.
So I'm a professional archaeologist along with my wife Amanda Valco. She is also a professional archaeologist, and the two of us have been working this public archaeology program here at Clear Creek State Park for 19 years now. What we're excavating is a blacksmith shop that was associated with the Frazier brothers sawmill complex that was located here in the park during the 1800s and the very first part of the 1900s. So an archaeologist is kind of like a crime scene investigator. Now everybody has seen on TV the crime scene shows where they come across a crime and the CSI, the crime scene investigator, says don't touch anything, don't move anything, don't mess up my crime scene. That's because they're collecting the clues from the crime to try to figure out what happened there. They send the items off to the lab, but first they photograph them and map them out where they're located on the ground. Well, an archaeologist is very much like a crime scene investigator, except our clues are buried in the ground. What happened hundreds of years ago, or maybe even thousands of years ago. So the archaeologist is trying to reconstruct what happened from the little bits and pieces that we find buried in the ground. Okay. So the reason we started excavating at this location is because people were finding iron artifacts in this area that was a popular fishing hole next to the stream here. And Suzanne Rensel, who was the park education specialist at the time, contacted Amanda and I to see about doing an archaeological excavation. She thought that maybe this was a blacksmith shop, and it proved that she was correct. So we began the excavations in 2004, initially as a public program just to see to confirm that it was a blacksmith shop, and it became, from the artifacts we found that year, it was apparent that it was. We found a part of a blacksmith's tong and a lot of metal artifacts, particularly chains that were cut in what we call the hot cut method, where the chain links would have been heated up in the forge and then cut on a wedge over the anvil. So our first year was successful enough that we decided to continue the program with the public, and it continued ever since then. So we dig 3 weekends a summer. My wife and I come up and set up the dig site on Friday, and then we work with the public from 9 to 4 o'clock on Saturday, and then we reserve the Sunday for us to make sure we have all our notes and photographs and maps and everything done, so we're not losing any of the information. Because when we excavate an archaeological site, we're actually destroying it. So it's our photographs, notes, and maps, and all the documentation that we create during the excavation that preserves the information that we're finding. There were several sawmill sites in Clear Creek State Park. This sawmill next to the blacksmith shop operated between, we think, 1878 to about 1905. There was an older sawmill upstream that was operating in I think as early as the 1840s. This sawmill replaced the one upstream, probably with an upgrade in technology. About that time, this 1870s, late 1870s, was the time when the lumber industry in the Allegheny National Forest region was industrializing. The railroads were coming into the region, and it was just scaling up to industrial size lumber extraction. A lot of these sawmills had large band mills, not the circular blade that we think of, but a band, basically a big bandsaw, but big enough that they could cut through these very large old growth trees that were present in this area at that time. This lumber was being cut and sawn into boards and beams, and was being shipped downriver in rafts to Pittsburgh. And this whole region was supplying the lumber for basically all the homes and businesses that were being built in the Pittsburgh and downstream from Pittsburgh during the late 1800s and early 1900s. So the blacksmith shop, we started the excavations, and when we came here first, we had this idea of the village blacksmith as the model for the blacksmith shop. And from our findings and what we've learned, we're finding that this is not the correct model for this blacksmith shop. This blacksmith was specifically for the lumber mill. All the artifacts speak of the kind of things that the blacksmith would do for a lumber mill, and not the kind of things that a village blacksmith would do for the community. So it's a different type of blacksmith shop. And from our research around the area, it seems like this is a pattern. Each industry, whether it be a sand quarry or an iron furnace, each of these industries had their own blacksmith that specialized in the needs of that particular industry. And that's what we're finding.
Okay, so this is the site of the dig. And
yeah. So what we're working on right now is the last part of the excavation. This stone rubble is the ruins of the forge. It doesn't look like much right now, but if you kind of imagine, this would have been a square foundation, and they would have filled it in with rock and rubble up to a certain height, and then a bed of sand would be laid down on the top of it. And that's where the hot coals of the forge fire would have been. There probably would have been some kind of chimney, but that's long gone. We don't see any evidence of it, and we don't know what that would have looked like. We're still uncovering the forge area, so we don't know exactly the shape of it. These rocks right here, it's evident they have fallen off the top, and one of our next steps is to remove these rocks and dig out underneath to see where the line of the forge is located underneath here. So we're still working on this, and that's what probably we're going to do today. The forge being here, the anvil, we found the location of the anvil. It would have been right about here where this yellow box is. And we know that was the location for the anvil because there was a, down into the subsoil, there was what we call a post mold. So this is a dark stain filled soil of topsoil soil down into the subsoil in the shape of the post that was there.
Yeah, well,
and that
yeah, we actually have an example of one that's not
there's another post
excavated.
We think we have a post mold over here
right,
too.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see, but it's just a dark stain that goes deeper into, this might have been a corner post. We won't know for sure until we excavate it out.
Yeah. But
there's potentially a post there. We had a post mold on the other side of the forge too. So Gary Gilmore was a forester for the DCNR, and he also does reenacting for Blacksmith. And he came down to visit the site when we were excavating right after we found the anvil location. And it was interesting because he was telling us that the forge anvil arrangement was either set up so that the blacksmith would turn 90 degrees to the anvil or 180 degrees to the anvil. And he's looking at this arrangement, he said, this is 180 degrees. And as he said that, he said, where was the scrap pile? And as he asked that question, he gestured this way with his left hand, and that's exactly where we found the scrap pile in our first part of the excavation. So it fit his understanding of how these blacksmith shops were laid out and the spatial patterning of the shop. So it was forge, anvil, scrap pile, and we believe. And there was so much metal in the ground around the anvil location that you could actually take a magnet and pick up the soil, because all that spalling was still from hitting the iron pieces. All that hot spalls that went into the ground, they were still there in the ground from all that activity. We had on the back side of the forged box, we had pieces of leather with that were nailed to pieces of wood, and it had also copper rivets in it. So we believe that those are fragments of the bellows. So that tells us that the bellows was probably on this side of the forge.
Yeah, one of the other things I found interesting is the amount of ox shoes that turned up. When you're talking about log skidding, most people think of horses, but oxen were used a lot, and they were, there was apparently they used them here quite often.
So during the earliest period, this sawmill complex had railroad grades. Now they were crude. When we think of a railroad, we think of the iron rails. They were probably crude wooden railroads, but they had cars that would run on these rails. But they weren't using steam engines for pulling these cars. They were using oxen. Yeah. And this is one of the key differences between the village blacksmith and this blacksmith shop. The village blacksmith is really associated with horseshoeing. And any photos you see of a village blacksmith shop, horseshoes are on the wall or on the ground, all over the place. We've only found 2 or 3 horseshoes off this entire site, but we found lots and lots of oxen shoes. And there was how many in one of these squares here? We had like 16.
Yeah, they were turning them up, one after the other. The one thing I've heard about oxen, though, is to shoe them, they had to be lifted up.
Yes.
They had to be put in a sling because you couldn't just pick their foot up like you could a horse. Didn't find any sign of that.
We didn't. Yeah, I've actually had the opportunity to see several of these slings and how they're built.
Yeah.
They're a wood frame that the oxen would walk into, and they didn't actually pick the oxen up. They just took a little bit of weight off them to make them feel like they were secure,
Yeah.
so that you could lift their foot up without them, you know, getting panicked.
Yeah.
And it's possible that could have been in one side of the blacksmith shop, or maybe just outside of the blacksmith shop.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very likely there would have been something like that here.
Yeah.
But that frame wouldn't have survived, and it's something they may have taken with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So this is one of the things about this blacksmith shop, is that the fabric of the blacksmith shop is preserved in the ground. A typical village blacksmith, where it's a pretty substantial stone building, often once the blacksmithing it's no longer used as a blacksmith shop, it gets cleaned out and used as a storage shed or as an animal pen. Well, with this blacksmith shop, once the lumber was stripped bare from these hill slopes and the sawmills moved on, they took what was of value in the blacksmith shop and left it. The building was just decayed then.
Yeah.
So the spatial pattern where the artifacts were dropped, they stayed there till today. That's how we're finding them, and that's how we can figure out where the different workstations within the blacksmith shop were located. So it's been a very data-rich excavation at this site. So when we excavate an archaeological site, we're actually destroying it. So it's important that we take very careful notes. So we dig in 1 meter squares that are set up in a grid, and each square has an actual grid number. And all the artifacts from that square are saved for that square. We know where everything was found on the site. We take detailed written notes. We create sketches of our excavations, the pattern of the rocks in the ground and the soil colors, and lots of photographs. And this is what we use then this huge book is full of notes from 19 years of excavations, and that's what we'll use then to reconstruct the whole story of the blacksmith shop and to write a detailed report for the State Museum of Pennsylvania. And eventually we hope to publish a book about the blacksmith shop and the sawmills and what this is all about and how it relates to the lumber heritage of the region.
Okay.
And Amanda, do you want to say anything?
We're getting ready for today's excavations. I'm showing Jenna the EES for Clear Creek here, just what happens on the site and how we prepare and what we do to get things ready for our volunteers coming in today. So.
Okay. All right. I'd like to thank Amanda and Brian, and we'll try to get some video while we're digging.
We have big ones. Chris has small ones over here. Forget about that. Use them, and here's what Brian was saying. There might be subsoil over some darker stuff. Yeah. So I'm almost.
What Brian's
wondering-
doing is mapping out the features in this unit.
Yeah, because this doesn't look quite down. Yeah. And this is still dark over here. And I'd cut, just definitely cut.
Now I use this
Okay.
kind of grid thing with PVC pipe
Yeah,
as a way
that's
to
what
help
we have over here.
measure.
I think what happened is that some of
The alternative is to measure the stones by hand with a measuring tape from the sides of the square.
I mean, it's hard
But
to
this
do
is
that, but
a
it's,
quicker
you know,
method.
You start to then get a feel for the soil and if there's a change. Sometimes. Terry's been dying to take that out for a long time.
Well, that's been like for like 2 or 3 years now. It's been sticking out there.
I thought we just found that you found that last year.
No, it's been at least two. It's been like 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't want to leave it any longer.
Okay, so this is a unit I've actually been working on about 2 years, and there's a file in here that we're going to lift today. Now let me explain what's going on with the next segment. It's a series of still photographs, and it documents the lifting of that file that I was talking about. Now I exposed that file 2 years ago, and we couldn't lift it at that time to maintain the, I guess, the integrity of the dig. We had to move on to other units and eventually come back to it. And today was the day we lifted it. Now, Amanda has a policy on her digs that whoever finds an artifact is the person that lifts it. So I got the honors since I found it originally, and I was going to film it, videotape it, and I set the camera up and pressed a button, and not realizing that the camera was on and I was actually turning it off. I'll tell you what, sometimes technology is just hard, you know. But we did have a series of stills that Amanda took, and we're going to walk through the lifting of that file and some other artifacts with the still photographs. So this shows the orientation of the artifact within the unit. That's the file on the right. That other arrow on the left is pointing to what proved to be an ox shoe, and there were several other metal artifacts within that unit. So there I am setting up the camera to not film the extraction. Now that's removing some more soil prior to lifting. Now these next two photos are pulling the file out. It wasn't practical to excavate down to the bottom of the file, so at some point you just grasp it and pull it out. Now this is just removing other metal artifacts that were there. There were some ox shoes, some bolts, and several indistinguishable rusty pieces of metal. Now these next two photos are just photos of the file after it's out of the ground. One of the things that disturbs archaeology is rodent holes.
Here,
There.
all through there.
But
I didn't think they went that far down.
yeah.
I'm used to moles. Like, you know, I have a lot of moles in our area, and they don't seem to get up. Well, you know, because they push up the ground up.
Yeah, chipmunks. We think this possibly here may have been the chimney from the forge. There's some
Like where that mortar is.
there's some mortar here. Is that a brick?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, brick. And it looks like there's a break in the strata here, and then the material fell on top of it. There's some burnt wood. Let's see, Chris has got a piece of burnt wood right there. And you're the only one working.
Work it. Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. So,
A lot of nice burnt wood pieces in there. Ready for inspection. Unless they have to
looking for pieces of brick,
Coal,
charcoal cinders, small pieces of metal, slag, stone. It's been what's the word for stone? Exposed to fire. Thermally
yeah.
altered. That was it.
I didn't use the stick on these ones.
I don't know if we really need it, but
I'm just putting the north arrow in.
Was that south of Youngstown? Yeah, like 30 miles south of Youngstown. I don't think I've ever been there. No, that's okay. There's not much to go see there.
Salem, Ohio? Oh, okay. So you are, what city is
Seem like much of anything. This.
The roots.
Pieces of burnt wood. Brick.
I get a lot of stuff. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I don't either. I just haven't come over. I just try to pick out what it looks like they want, and then I have them. Come on down.
When we find, we find features or some kind of thing into the ground, like a storage pit or a refuse pit or a fire pit, we'll save part of the soil out of it. And we use the
So
process
you're all
called
done with this,
flotation.
Terry?
We'll actually
Yeah.
wash the dirt.
Yeah, that's
Silly, but we have like
yeah, everything
wedding
that
veil
came out of that
ornament,
unit
the
today.
fine mesh
Okay.
screen.
I did jot some notes
Well,
down if you
anything
want to
that
add
floats,
anything.
We have a bucket with a
feel
spout.
free.
We run water
Okay.
through it. The dirt goes into that. We measure out how much dirt, the volume of dirt is we put
Paperwork
in.
is right
Anything that
here.
floats, we'll catch in that organ.
See if you want to add
charred
anything
seeds,
else. I put
charred
in that you were
nutshell,
filming.
shells, fish scales,
Okay.
and small bones we'll capture in that real fine screen.
So what we're doing here is shooting elevations of features within a unit, and that'll be used to make a 3D map of the excavation later on.
So we can put in here strap. And same with over here, you can just mark a strap. And then
Okay.
that way we can, let's do this as stretch. And then we can put them on sewing. And yeah, you'll just have to use those.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so
But
much.
no, that, and then I'll put your card back. We'll put these over here.
Okay, behind the pole.
Let me know if you have
Better?
it. I'll give you a bag. Here's a bag.
Okay.
Okay, what do I need
Probably
next? Center?
not,
Yeah.
especially since it was just
Okay. Center is going to be close to there.
Okay. So what you're doing here is photographing the units. Hey, except for some outtakes, that wraps up Forest County Outback 32, the dig at Clear Creek. And I want to thank Brian and Amanda and everybody who worked on the dig for putting up with me running around like a fool with the camera. And so, like, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget to check out our Facebook page at Forest County Outback. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Catch you on the next one. Okay, the main reason I'm here today is to work on an archaeological dig, and I'm here with Brian Frazier. You know, that's okay. All right, yeah, there we go.
That's what I do all the time.
That's a sawmill.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you should just change your name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're probably gonna want to come in a little more.
All right. Well, this.
So where do I want to go from here?
Yeah. I do that a lot.
Okay. This is why you have editing.
That's why we have.
And this is why you shoot B-roll to cover this kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I'll take some.
Yeah.
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 People love them.
Okay, so where I said cover, we were blacksmith shop 19 years.